Hey, it's your boy Steve. Just getting on the camera to kind of recap the stuff I've been reading about today. Oh man, my brain hurts. You know how you get into studying, you're like, I really don't have the capacity for this one. It's a little bit overwhelming. It's mostly the math, like there's so many parts for this. So, I've been reading a lot of Network Plus stuff. Then I got into the cellular section. Um, and with cellular, it's really interesting and complex because the way you normally have a network is, you have a box, your router, and then you have, if you need to make a bigger network, you get a second box, then they communicate with each other and figure things out and basically create a table of contents saying, hey, this is where all the devices are. And then it refreshes that every couple seconds or so. And it keeps track of all that. So with the cellular network, they've got thousands of boxes all over the place, talking with each other, talking with the main hub, either with each other or they have to be rerouted back to the main hub to keep track of where you're at. Um, I always assumed it was GPS based, it keeps track of where your physical location is and then switches you over to the next geographical block. Um, that would make the most sense, the quickest way of doing it. But they might be doing it based on signal strength. It'll figure out where the best antennas are, and then connect you to that associated one. Kind of like the way Wi-Fi works. How sometimes your Wi-Fi signal is less than some of your neighbors. So it won't. If you were able to connect to all of them, then it would be your own home one that it would be trying to connect to. Um, So that's something I need to research probably a little bit more. But I was mostly focused today on identifying 5G capabilities. It's really going to be a futuristic endeavor. I was reading a book today titled um, "The 5G Guide to GSMA." I'm about 100 pages into it. Let me see if I can find the actual. It's basically just a informational thing that came out last year. Um, it's been going over a lot of what um, about all the features and capability that 5G essentially has. Um, they simplified it though a lot more than some of the other stuff has been. Um, I was going into some mathematical equations on how um, the frequency ranges and stuff work, and the MIMO technology and stuff like that, which 5G supposedly has, which is fascinating. So MIMO, what it does is it basically has multiple antenna arrays to identify where you're located, so that it can directly beam the information at you. Because with the older style router, what it'll do is it'll say, this is the information you want, but I'm going to throw it literally every direction possible and create a lot of noise because of that. So with the directional signal, it's able to make a lot less noise. Excuse me, it's been a long day. Um, it's able to be more directional and then therefore causing less pollution with the antennas or other antennas that are going to be trying to communicate with other devices. So you're able to be a lot more efficient and communicate with more devices a lot more efficiently because you can have an entire tower with a whole array of antennas going in multiple different directions, making it a lot more energy efficient as well as less congestion because it's not having to wait its turn each time. Wow, I'm really bad off today. Sorry about that. So, there's been a lot of companies that are like pushing to get 5G up and going. Because with 5G, you're able to do essentially the spectrum between 4G and then all the way through millimeter wave, which is the high end of 5G technology, which is fantastic. Um, the thing that I foresee two different concepts when I'm thinking about this is the customer facing of things. It seems like they're going to be basically creating VLANs, um, so virtual wide area networks essentially. So they're able to put people on different virtual networks essentially. So you could have things like um, emergency services on one, and like government agency on another one, and then have businesses on one, and then have just like the consumer side. The nice thing about all that is that you could prioritize how the traffic's being impacted. So if there's you can create a system to scale it. So like, hey, our business customers need more bandwidth automatically, or the our emergency services need to have the all the bandwidth that they need. So if you're in a really crowded area, first responders could actually communicate, properly. Um, it could potentially just shut off an entire VLAN, which is scary to think about. I didn't even think about that. It could shut off an entire VLAN, so there's less noise on the lines, or just cripple it so that they can get the messages and stuff out as quick as possible. Um, which I think is really great because, like I said, it's going to be able to prioritize, manage, and um, make things more efficient because of that. Man, I'm really yawning today. Sorry about that. Yeah, I need to look into that some more. That's gonna be interesting how they're gonna. I can't wait to see how they do that. Because I know with like Wi-Fi 6, for instance, they can create VLANs for that as well, but they can also tell like Internet of Things, IoT devices, to like basically shut up unless they actually need to communicate with you. Because most usually with a device, it's usually trying to broadcast at all times, just saying, "Hey, I'm still here. Look at me, I'm great." Whereas with Wi-Fi 6, they're able to turn down the frequency and says, "Hey, I'm only going to communicate with you occasionally, like maybe once a day, if even necessary." That makes it so that the Internet of Things device, if it's battery powered, it doesn't need to be powered on all the time, or it doesn't need to be, it can just be on basically a trickle in comparison. So battery life could be a big thing. That's why I'm excited for Wi-Fi 6 to become more of a thing, because you get better speeds, and then you also get potential energy savings with devices. So if your device isn't active or isn't needing to communicate with the internet, it could do that. Um, it's going to be interesting because I didn't think about this, but with Wi-Fi 6, if they could create a DNS controller for it, you could potentially really make it so that there's no broadcasting needing to be done. So the DNS controller meaning you could basically have all your accounts set up and then say, hey, if there's something new, then send it to the device and have it broadcast to communicate. But otherwise, just have it not have to communicate at all. It'd be interesting to see how that energy impact does on things. Add that to my notes. That'll be interesting. Um, anyway, so for 5G, there's a lot of companies pying to get it set up. I know Verizon's hitting up the millimeter wavelength for some weird reason. I don't know why they're hitting up that side of it so much. I think they're just doing it kind of as a gag right now to just test it out in cities. Um, T-Mobile, I feel like, is making the smart move with it. They're using the lower frequency range for it. So you won't get the full gigabit speeds, but you'll still get upwards of 200 megabits per second down, which is a heck of a lot faster than what most people have. Um, I'm curious if they are able to use the same equipment or if they have to use specialized 5G equipment. If it's able to be in the same spectrum as 4G, in theory they could just flip a switch and then be broadcasting at 5G speeds. I think in order to get the millimeter wave, they probably would need to upgrade, but it's above my education level. I would need to research the equipment they're using and then potentially research how the frequency stuff works as well, and if it's able to output the same frequency or if they have to actually upscale them to 5G. Yeah, I'm only 100 pages into that book, and I'm probably only about 10 hours into this, so I'm not incredibly versed just yet. That's been my goal. That's why I've been studying it so much today. But some of the interesting tidbits were, in terms of usage for like energy savings, was they're estimating in the next 10 years it's going to be a $2 trillion market. You can get under 1 millisecond latency between you and the tower, obviously. Then it's up to the backbone communications of how long that's going to take. They saw comparison from 4G to 5G. They saw a 90% reduction in energy use. I'm not sure how that is, if that's on the tower side or if that was on the device side. I'm assuming they were implying it was the device side, but yeah, because they said 10-year battery for sensors, so I'm assuming it's a reduction on the tower side, so it doesn't have to It doesn't have to work as hard and as much because it's able to just send the information out really quick in much tighter waveform, so that it doesn't have to stay turned on all the time. Probably could do what Wi-Fi 6 does and actually turn out its frequencies unless someone's needing to communicate with it. I think the backbone thing is going to be the most difficult part. I know Dish recently bought out Spectrum and Boost Mobile so that they can start up a market for carriers, and then they're going to hit heavy on the 5G side of things. I think the backbone is what's going to hurt them the most. They could put almost hotspot. Biggest problem is they don't have an internet provider. I think they would need to team up with a couple different internet providers, especially if they're going to be in multiple cities. Unless they can get enough of a downlink from their satellites to help. I know that for the next couple of years, T-Mobile's going to be helping them out a lot with at least the 4G spectrum and keeping Boost alive until they can get things underneath themselves. But the biggest concern is just getting access to the internet. I think is going to be their biggest problem. I know Google's been hitting pretty hard with internet. They might just see if they can strike a deal with them, or a company like them, maybe like with, it's terrible to sound, someone like CenturyLink, at least here in Colorado. CenturyLink is pretty terrible for the most part, but it's not Comcast, because Comcast is probably not going to provide that kind of backbone. They're just going to refuse it because they'd rather just keep on sucking money out of their customers. Comcast here is charging under a 2-year contract around $60 for 60 megabits per second down. I think it's improved to 100, but that's still pretty abysmal, especially when you compare to what 5G is going to potentially do. I think that's the main thing I'm excited for 5G, is that it might get companies like Comcast to actually budge and make progress on at least their pricing. I think their pricing's pretty sad. But anyways, back to Dish. I think their best bet is to make some partnerships with local companies to get fiber to certain locations, and then they're probably gonna have to use microwave technology to get the higher end 10 gigabit per second, unless they were just to beam it from tower to tower, but I'm not sure. They'd either have to use lasers or microwaves, which might not be allowed in downtown areas. That'd be interesting. But yeah, they would at least need a couple different sites for with fiber connections. Um, I think in the next 5 years, this book I was reading, they were estimating like a 20% increase in fiber usage, just because it's becoming more and more common to have that kind of backbone. Um, yeah, it's just it's a very expensive and logistics nightmare. I believe they're going to be using a third party for the computational side of things, but the backbone part of it, I think, is going to be the most difficult. It'd be interesting if they ended up partnering up with SpaceX in their Starlink systems. So Starlink is satellite-based internet that they're starting to do beta testing with right now. But if Dish could jump on with them, because Dish obviously has their own satellites, but they're too high up in orbit to get the lower latency that SpaceX is looking to get. So if they could do a partnership with them, Dish could basically create a ground-based solution for Starlink, and then Starlink could focus on their space side of it more. Um, I wonder if their Dish's net satellites could be converted to work with Starlink's. Um, and then, of course, I'm not sure if Starlink would want to do a partnership like that or not, but that would be interesting. That'd probably be the easiest way to get internet to everyone, because companies like Comcast are going to prevent it to death because of. I know with Google, they were having a huge issue with that. Google's getting blocked from every way they could from a number of cities. They really get their feet wet a little bit in a few cities, but I know here in Denver they were actually using like microwave towers and probably some form of 5G or something like that, directional antennas and stuff in the downtown area to get the service where they needed it, because Comcast and stuff locks stuff down so hard. But it's exciting. I'm really excited to see where 5G goes, because in the very least it's going to cause everybody to rethink the way they do things. The speeds are going to be really awesome, especially with automated cars and things like that. I think that could be another reason why SpaceX partnership with Dish would be interesting, because they're both the underdog in terms of this space, and everybody's going to scoff at them. But if they can pull it off, they will really shake up this industry, and it's going to be fantastic. Um, Sorry, reading through my notes some more. Um, yeah, I just have a lot of unanswered stuff that I'm just haven't dived into yet. Um, like the whole microwave thing, like how does that all work, and how does that compare in terms of range? Um, kind of surprised. I'm kind of curious why laser wasn't considered. I'm assuming it's because of um, interference and accuracy. You have to be directly pointed at it. I think just microwave emissions are probably going to be easier, because then you could do upload and download speeds at different frequencies, and then yeah, kind of curious. Stuff gets so complicated. Like I would need to have a math degree to understand that kind of stuff, but I think I can get some general understanding of it once I start staring at it long enough. Um, but I think fiber networks is going to be the next big thing to help internet get on the ground. Problem here in the U.S. is just our backbone is just so broken. Um, we're getting charged way too much for what we get. Comparison, I saw somebody made a post one day in India. They're paying like $10 a month for gigabit speeds. I'm just like, can we get gigabit speeds at a reasonable price? Because here Comcast will, unless you're paying for it, Comcast will cap you at 1 terabyte downloads. Um, so if you go over a terabyte each month, um, they will actually start to charge you per gigabyte, which is atrocious. Unless you pay like an extra 50 or $100, which in this connected world we're in, that's not hard to hit, especially if you have family more than two. Even with two, if you're playing video games all day and streaming, Netflix on 4K, that's not going to be hard to hit at all. Um, I mean, I'm streaming stuff most of the day and uploading videos to YouTube and stuff, and I'm probably getting close to 400 gigabytes used just myself. Um, of course, I have a lot of devices, so it's hard for me to be able to see that. I'd have to actually set up a monitoring system on my router, but yeah, it's internet, man. It's nuts, and I feel like it's changing a lot faster than people realize. Um, Especially now that everybody's working from home. I couldn't imagine what kind of load differential they have going on for ISPs across the board. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see how they're gonna change their pricing pretty soon, or if they're definitely gonna bother with it. It's gonna be interesting to see how they will. Probably gonna come out with some more restrictions, like more caps and stuff like that. Drives me nuts that we can't just have easily accessible internet options for everybody. I think 5G is going to be the real thing. I mean, imagine having 5G in your car and then be able to just have your devices connect to your car. Since your car is a much bigger antenna, it's able to broadcast at a much higher frequency, um, which would be awesome. But anyways, yeah, that's basically my days. Cellular internet, man. It needs to happen. It's just nobody wants to. I know when I was working with carrier stuff, the typical cap was at 20 gigabytes a month used for 4G. Um, Unless you wanted to pay an exorbitant amount. I think with Comcast it was an extra like $30 or $40, and they capped you at 70 gigabytes used. So if you're the type of person that's just never home or doesn't have internet at home, that makes it rough. I know on my phone I'm using at least 10 or 15. I'm wondering if I forgot. I need to research it, but I wonder if they do that as a cumulative or a single user. I think they do it as single user, but yeah. Caps, man, they suck. I don't know why we have to have so many caps. I wonder how much it's costing them for me to use 20 gigabytes a month on their plan. Like realistically. Anyways, especially since they're charging me $60 a month for it. So, yeah. So the next things I'm going to be looking into is there's some software that's been tossed around with at least with the Dish merger. Kubernetes is the company. They are doing the AI software essentially for how to manage the traffic flow to the towers, so they can better relay the traffic and manage it better than what just a standard option would be. Um, and then research some of the more like why there's so much energy savings. I haven't gotten that far into the book yet. And then research some of the more of the microwave and like distances and things like that. Because the biggest problem in some areas, like here in Colorado, you'd probably be okay because we have a lot of rolling hills, but it's not like you could just put a tower on the top of the hill and then just be able to cover a lot more land because of that. But I could imagine places out east are a lot more difficult. Like I remember when I was living out in Connecticut, they'd have a lot of trees and everything was flat. Like you just don't get a signal out there then. So that's why Dish got lucked out and got the frequency ranges that were a lot lower. like right around the 2 gigahertz range, because that's able to penetrate buildings a little bit better, which would be trees. I could foresee if they can get a contract with with a company like CenturyLink, even though CenturyLink already has contracts with AT&T and Dish or DirecTV, so that's not going to work. So Comcast might be the only option here in Colorado unless they can get something weird with CenturyLink, but I think they're in a contract deal. Get something with like Comcast where they could either just use their existing hotspot data or use something else. But what I was thinking about doing is modifying the pre-existing satellites to have a 5G antenna as well. I'm not sure how that's going to affect satellite feeds, but attaching a 5G tower up there as well would make it so that there's a small hotspot in some neighborhoods. Then you could just upgrade people. I believe they are currently using coax for their satellites, which is very robust and simple, but they could upgrade it to I wonder if they could upgrade it to a PoE based system, or maybe just have a 2-wire system. But a PoE system would be perfect for the 5G tower, because then they could plug that directly into their house modem. And then they could cover the whole neighborhood almost with 5G, because they could have every single site that they have dish at having a small antenna on it. Of course, I'm not sure how small we can make those things. That's the other concern, is those might not be small enough. But like I said, they could do something with Comcast where they're allowing their guest networks, kind of like the way that Comcast's own cellular network is. But like I said, I think that's too much competition for Comcast. Unless so Comcast, the way they do their cellular is they give you unlimited talk and text, and then they use Verizon as their backbone for the carrier side of things for the data. But if you're within range of one of Comcast's guest networks, they automatically will connect to things like that. So it's kind of like the way Google Fi works. So if somehow Dish could undercut Verizon's deal with Comcast and just say, hey, we'd like to also add on a 5G antenna into either the router or just have it on the side. We'll give your customers a discount. They could do that, but the problem is it's a conflict of interest, because Dish and Comcast both do TV, and then they'd also be doing network. That just wouldn't make sense. So sadly, that wouldn't work, at least here in Colorado. So I think, at least here in Colorado, the only options they would have is to either build it themselves, team up with Google, or potentially Starlink, because Starlink's probably going to be up and running in the next 5 years with how hard they're pushing it. And the nice thing about Starlink is they don't have to worry about boundaries and local restrictions. So they could potentially create an interesting merger there. Yeah, Comcast is going to make things difficult, I think, here in Colorado. I wonder if their main city is going to be here in Colorado or not for Dish. It would make sense that they would want it here, but I'm not sure if it would make sense with how many restrictions they're probably going to have on them. Making an ISP from scratch is difficult enough. Unless, of course, Denver is more open-minded and is able to allow more access to the fiber network and to creating a backbone. But judging that Google had to do their own version of stuff through the over-the-air using microwave and stuff like that, it's unlikely Dish will have much luck here, at least. Luckily, there's a lot of new infrastructure. That's going to be expensive, of course, but that could be a direction they could go. I'm not sure how broad spectrum is. I know here in where I live, they don't have it at all. You get Comcast. I think Comcast exclusively. I don't think you can get CenturyLink here. CenturyLink, most areas around here, it's if you're in one of the older neighborhoods, they are phone line only based. So you're getting lucky. You're lucky to get 20 down, and you're paying around $50 a month for that. In most instances. The newer neighborhoods, CenturyLink is putting down fiber, so you're able to get gigabit at least. It'd be interesting to do some research into if those neighborhoods they're putting fiber down into are getting fiber directly to the hubs, and then from the hubs are getting fiber to the outside world. I'm assuming they are, because they wouldn't put down fiber if that was the case, but it'd be some interesting research. Because I know with Comcast, most neighborhoods they'll do fiber to the neighborhood, and then run coax to your house, just because of just because that makes it less expensive to do. For whatever reason, that's cheaper to do. I'm assuming it's just because it was some newer tech, and at least in our neighborhood, that's how it was. I know in some of the newer ones, just because people like CenturyLink are doing more fiber, so Comcast has to follow suit. When I was talking to some of the Comcast representatives, they were talking about how Comcast spends a lot of money and time validating what the competition's doing in pretty much every single city in the U.S. They do that so that they can ensure that they're on par or better than the competition. So, but when I say on par, I'm just saying like, how much money can we get away with, charging people for the same price that we're spending? Yeah, I feel like Comcast is just trying to minimize the amount of effort they want to put in. So that's why I'm getting excited about 5G and potentially small businesses like Dish getting out of their comfort zone and forcing change to happen. Because we are so far behind in comparison to some of the Asian countries. Yeah, it's just bad. But anyways, I'm gonna end it here. Sorry, this is a long ramble. I was just recapping a lot today. I think I spent at least 5 hours today reading through things, trying to understand stuff, catching up. I'm kind of going through a multiple phase approach. Last 2 days I've been digging through Network Plus certification stuff. I have 5 different textbooks I'm digging through right now, and I'm just kind of cycling through them. I should probably start focusing on one particular one, but it'd be hard for me to focus that hard on just one particular subject. I think this has been a pretty good pace of understanding. What I've been doing lately is I'll spend a day like this where I'm just cramming as much as I can in my head, bringing up those questions that I have, and then over the next couple days I'll kind of sort it in my head, figure it out, and then do some more research, figure out that research, and then go from there. So it's pretty awesome. But anyways, you guys have a great day, and sorry if I ramble too much. It's a lot of fun. This stuff gets exciting, and I don't have anybody to really talk to about it, so this is my avenue of doing that.